Welcome to the Peaked podcast, where I talk about gender identity ideology and other bad ideas, women's rights and free speech from a European point of view. Right, so Lydia, which is your real name, are you out and out with your real family name, or do you have to keep that secret for professional reasons? Or
No, I am all out and bare.
Cool, very good. So you are a Dutch lady, and we know each other. I'm trying to remember now. Where's the first time? You're famous. I have a question about your famous video. So the video that went viral.
Famous video, yeah.
The famous video, and you might be sick of talking about it now, but I'm not, and I have some questions for you. I probably fangirled about this before. Did you wear white because it's suffragette colours when you did that stunt?
Oh, when I was interrupting the speech of Minister Kaag. I was wearing white.
Was it on purpose?
White. No, because it was summer and it's like one of my favorite outfits. You know, this satin blouse and a white pantalon. It's what I wear on a regular schmegular day.
Oh, really? Because I was like, she's wearing suffragette colours. I love this woman. So I'm going to let you tell your own story in a second, but I'm just going to recount how I came across this viral video and how excited I was. Sure. So last year, so it was last summer, was it only 2023 in the summer?
Yeah.
And the Liberal Party of the Netherlands was having their like annual get-together. Nice air-conditioned hall with all the nice people all sitting in rows, clapping politely for the nice speeches. And the leader of the D66 party was up on stage, blonde woman, very confident woman, you know, sort of just giving her spiel. And then suddenly out of nowhere, this young, beautiful woman just comes up the side. This is how I remember it, in white. And it was like she's wearing suffragette colours and just like points your finger at this arrogant woman standing on the stage. And I don't speak Dutch well enough to understand exactly what was being said, but I was like, that's a TERF. And so this video started doing the rounds, and you were basically saying to her, if I remember correctly, you won't stand up for women. Was that?
Yeah.
More or less? Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Could you tell me that, just why you did that and the story behind that, so we can understand what motivated you that day?
Well, the thing is that, so this party, D66, is one of the major parties that is pushing for this gender legislation. And also that lady in particular, Sigrid Kaag, she wanted to be the first female prime minister. And or I don't know. I don't know if it's the first, but she wanted to be a prime minister, and she's always talking about women's rights. And whenever somebody has critique on her, she always say, "Oh, that's hatred of women," and stuff like that. So she always talks about women. But at the same time, her party is pushing very hard to dismantle women's rights. And their Congress was in the city that I live in. So it was like super easy for me to just go online, buy a ticket and go there. So that's what I did. And, you know, it's very hard for us to get any form of attention in the media in which we actually get to, let's say, dominate the narrative. So it's always like, oh, these anti-trans people or stuff like that. So I wanted to, you know, get that conversation going again, and nothing went according to plan. I mean, I was surprised to be invited onto the stage. I thought they were going to drag me out of that hall. So that's why I had recorded my speech, and I had this boombox in my hand, but the hall was so much bigger than I was expecting. It was like 1,500 people in there. So you could not hear what I was saying. You could just hear me shout something after my recording. And that's when she invited me on stage. And then I thought, oh, shit, I'm going on stage. So like just on the spot, I had to think about what I was going to say to her. And I just said, look, as a woman, I feel betrayed by you and your party, because thanks to your efforts, we now have men in women's sports, in women's changing rooms. It's mostly women's facilities that are being neutralized, you know, and we cannot accept this. And so that happened. And then that went viral.
Yeah, it was amazing. And she seemed kind of, she took it, like she acted quite unfazed. I would say when I saw her reaction, I was like, she's a professional. It's probably not the first time she's been interrupted, but you were just a powerhouse. You didn't even need to know what you were saying just to know that. I was like, oh, it's because it's as a fellow TERF, I know how awful it is to just not be able to get your voice into the mainstream. So it just felt so powerful. Everybody was so proud of you. It was such a wonderful day.
Well, thank you.
Or multiple days that it went viral. But up until that point, so you're saying that we, as in us, gender critical women or sex realist women or whatever we're calling ourselves now, we hadn't been able to get heard in the Dutch press, in the media. And so you were like have you tried before that to sort of get journalists interested? I know there are a couple of journalists in the Netherlands who do talk about this, but had you tried and failed other methods before you became interrupting terrorist usurper?
Well, I had been in some media before, because on March 8th, on International Women's Day, I had this speech in Amsterdam in a very, I would say, far left debate center at an open mic. So there was already some, let's say, controversy about me as a person. Okay. But this definitely put a lot of more light onto that. But it is definitely hard because, like, even for example, the whole interrupting of Kaag's speech, some newspapers were like, oh, trans hater and this and that, and she's an extremist and whatever. So they will definitely turn it around into their own narrative, about who you are and what you stand for and stuff like that. But this definitely got more of a debate rolling, I feel, between people that were previously not necessarily involved in this fight.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because you sort of took control of the narrative for a few seconds, and then suddenly the what did I see? Wesley Yang called it this morning, the vertical integrated messaging machine then takes over control and say, oh, that woman, oh yeah, no, she's not actually a heroine who's like, speaking truth to power. She's actually a fash, anti-trans, terrible person. You can ignore her now. You can tune her out. But some people will go, I don't want to be told what to think about what I just saw. So when you say that, so I didn't know that. So before that, you had gone to an open mic in a far lefty place, and did you were they open to your comments there? Or did they turn on your ear?
No, I mean, as soon as I was finished, they, the people from the organization, they immediately ran to the stage, took the mic and said, oh, we don't stand, behind this messaging, and we take distance from it and stuff like that. But, I could tell that from the people sitting there were definitely some women that were either surprised or, let's say, happily surprised by the things I was saying. They were like winking at me and raising their glass and stuff like that. So not at all what I was expecting, actually. Like both of those times, I was expecting a lot of shit, if I can say that. But for every negative reaction, I've had like 99 other ones that were positive, especially from my own environment. People I hadn't talked to in like 10 years. All of a sudden, reaching out to me and saying, oh my God, I saw you there. I think that's so brave. I love that you said that, and stuff like that. So,
wonderful. And it's actually, because I don't know that much about Dutch society, but I obviously live just over the border, and I do know a lot of Dutch people, and I know all the cliches about Dutch culture. It has taken me surprised by how Dutch society has rolled over on this more than I thought they would, because it's so libertarian in so many ways. And I think, like, on the one hand, you have, and it's a bit of a paradox. Let me know what you think about this, but I've always thought it's a bit of a paradox that the Dutch are so freedom loving or libertarian that they'll say, yeah, you go cut your balls off and pretend you're a woman. I don't care. Like, feel free to live your life. That's a very typical Dutch attitude. But then on the other hand, I remember Alma van His, is that how I say her name, the journalist? She was telling me that people sort of got their backs up then when they were told you can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore. And it's, so you sort of instituted this kind of, you can do this new ideology sort of seeped into the culture, and everyone was like, yeah, that doesn't bother me, go do your thing. But then as soon as you were told, like, okay, you have to change your language to accommodate these people, Dutch people were like, hold on a second, that's not the deal here.
Yeah, and I feel like there's definitely some paradox there, because if you think about it, the Dutch were the first to have legal same-sex marriage, for example. So the Dutch people, they really pride themselves on being very open, and gay people can do whatever they want, and anybody can do whatever they want. I mean, we have this whole red light district, and you can smoke weed and all this stuff. But at the same time, so like in that light, a lot of people didn't necessarily had any problems with the whole transgender movement. But at the same time, Dutch people, they're very, the translation would be sober, but they're like, just act normal, and because that's already crazy enough. That's one of a very famous Dutch saying. So the moment.
Say it again. The saying is what? Act normal.
The saying is act normal. That's already crazy enough. So as soon as you say stuff like, oh, you can't say ladies and gentlemen anymore, or we're gonna call women who we're not gonna call them women anymore, but menstruators or stuff like that, then a lot of people will be like, okay, that's nuts. And why do we have to do this? So and I think a lot of people are really afraid of being called anything similar to homophobic or racist. And because now you have this word transphobe, of course, which is so-called on the same line, a lot of people will try to stay away from very controversial topics until it hits them personally.
And so would you say that Dutch people are more reactive to being told what to do than other cultures in your experience?
In a way, yes.
Might that be what
definitely saves? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I mean, it's really strange. In one hand, we were, like I said, the first to have legal same-sex marriage, but at the same time, this whole thing about where is it, Tasmania, where lesbians are not allowed to like come together without males. We've had a court case like that in 2012 already. So in 2012 already, lesbians, they were trying to have this erotic party. And then there was, a man who thinks he's a woman. He wanted to, enter this party. He was refused. And then, the Human Rights Council said that this was discrimination. So, it's really weird how I think people are just way too accepting that they really quickly also undo any further progress, in the process.
Wow. It's I wonder what it will be that will save the Dutch in the end, because as we know, the self-ID bill has been, it's like dragging out now for ages.
Yeah, for a long time. I don't think it's going. It's not.
You don't think it's
going
to
come true? No, because with the last election results, I'm sure you've heard, the party of Geert Wilders has gotten a huge win, which was really, I mean, for some people it was unexpected. For me, not so much. But so we have this what people call like a right wing wave or something like that. So with the current division in Parliament, I don't think such a bill would have a majority. No.
So let's just back up there a minute to before Geert Wilders' party got a stake in the government, basically, because they're not the biggest. They're not.
And right now they're the biggest. Yes, by a lot too. So.
So when when Nicola Sturgeon got whatever happened in Scotland, and Nicola Sturgeon lost the leadership. Hold on, did she? Yeah, she did. Yeah, sorry, I'm really bad at politics. But basically, when Nicola Sturgeon was ditched by the Scots, I was saying to people in my family who are not TERFs, I was like, you see what happens, because it was such a big, huge deal around that time, the talk of the self-ID bill in Scotland, and they were like, you're being ridiculous to try and tie your pet hobby to the fall of a government or whatever. What percentage, how important was the gender self-ID discussion to Geert Wilders' electoral success in the Netherlands? Is it mostly farmers? Is it ridiculous to tie it to gender stuff?
You can tie it to gender stuff, but it's more the whole. I mean, they call it woke. I have a problem with calling it woke because I don't think it's woke. But you know what I mean with this whole wokeness, right? So we're not only talking about gender bills, but we're also talking about, for example, DIY and diversity and inclusion and stuff like that. So Wilders has a very outspoken opinion on all of this stuff, and that is definitely something that a lot of people agree with. So it's not only the gender stuff; it's also migration, and acting like all Black people are victims all the time, and stuff like that. People they're really sick of this.
Identity politics.
The identity politics, and also like the previous government, they were corrupt in many ways. I mean, I really don't have any other words for it. But they never went away. They just let the government fall. They have new elections, and so whenever things they don't go their way, they just find ways to like sort of get out of any responsibility. So I feel like a lot of people also voted for Wilders just out of protest. Like, so whatever kind of government we're gonna have next, it's not gonna be you guys for sure.
Yeah.
So I think it all contributed to it together, but definitely not only gender. No.
Yeah. Okay. And so I think probably the Netherlands was the bellwether. What's the what's the word? You're the first of many to come. Because I think in the European elections that are coming up, I think we're going to get a lot of right wingers. I think. I
hope so. Yeah, I hate to say it as a left wing woman, but I really hope the right is going to take over, because the left has absolutely lost their minds, and it's not just the left, it's some center parties. They are just with them on the crazy train. I don't know if you've seen, but
what explains that, do you think?
I think because we have gotten to a point where we are not only disagreeing on things, but we are deeming some opinions morally right and morally wrong. So if you don't agree with some of their policies, you're racist, or you're transphobe, or you are like with COVID, we had like this cuss word wappies for people who didn't want to take the vaccine and stuff like that. So you have like a lot of people, like they don't want to be considered wrong based off of their opinion, so they just follow along, and they don't want to like get into start pushing back against certain narratives, because that does not mean that you just have a different opinion. No, it means that you are A, B, and C, which is all wrong. So I think people just have gotten very weak, and a lot of these politicians, they just go along with a narrative because they're afraid of, losing their reputation and stuff.
You were talking about even like right-wing, traditionally center or center-right parties are also have sort of accepted the right's framing or labeling as bad opinion, bad person.
Yeah, definitely, because the VVD was the biggest party beforehand, and we've had a VVD prime minister for the last 13 or 14 years, and they are actually more of a, let's say, right-wing party. They're very much for like business owners, and the big money and stuff like that, but even they go completely along with this gender madness. So and then there's only a handful of more right parties that are going against this gender, the whole gender thing. So to say that this is a left or right issue is not even very accurate.
It's not accurate
at this point. Yeah.
So we had the left parties, all like the left, the socialists, the Greens, they're basically all the same as each other.
All of them, yeah.
And then you had what used to be called the right or the centre right, and they've joined and they've sort of moved very far left. And then the only thing that we've left, if we don't want to buy into this identity politics obsessed Genderwang, we have to go to the ones over on the far right. And so I think probably people are looking at that and saying, well, what's the worst that could happen if we vote these people in? And the worst that could happen, I guess, Wilders, he was just like a very, very scary word before, but I think he's becoming a lot more acceptable to people. And now I'm looking at people, even in the MEPs in the European Parliament, like Asida Kanko, who's in what would have once been considered a right-wing party, and just she's looking very good to me now.
Yeah, and the thing is also, like, if we're going to talk about left and right here, Wilders is actually not even, I would not consider him a very right-wing politician, because for example, his economical plans, they are pretty much left wing. But the thing that is right wing to a lot of people is his stance on immigration and Islam. Basically, he has a very controversial stance on Islam. But the thing is, after October 7th, and I'm sure you guys saw this also, like we had a lot of these protests, with a lot of mostly Muslim people going on the street and stuff like that. So even people that were not necessarily seeing them as a threat, all of a sudden they became a little bit like, oh, okay, what exactly is going on here? Oh, you guys are really with a lot, aren't you? Oh, wow, you're really radical in your views, are you not? So they sort of handed him the victory on a platter. Yeah, they really handed
I was exactly going to use those words. They just handed it to him. Okay, so if let's say I am an autogynephile in the Netherlands right now, how difficult is it for me to change my legal sex and pretend I'm a woman and have access to all services? Do you know?
Not so hard anymore, because to get women on your passport, you need to have a doctor's statement that you have gender dysphoria. And this is not hard to get. You can get this after just a couple of talks, basically. And people will also advise each other on what to say, so that you can actually have this diagnosis. For example, there was this girl, she went viral on TikTok, saying that only after 3 conversations at the gender clinic, she already got, the diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And even though she already had a lot of other issues, which were known at the time, like bipolar and PTSS, stuff like that. So it's not hard to get the papers, but there is a waiting list.
Sorry, just to interrupt so I understand. So you're only talking about getting your gender change, your legal sex change on your passport, or are we talking about, can people get like birth certs changed, or does there exist such a thing as a gender recognition certificate like they have in the UK and Ireland?
Well, that would be just to change, the letter on your passport or on your ID, and then with that you can do pretty much anything you want, because, for example, we now have at least 2 males in a women's prison, and the reason why they were sent to women's prison is because they have female on their passports or on their documents.
So that's all that was required. So in the National Register, they are registered as female.
They're registered as female.
Okay, and it's it just, sorry to go off on a tangent here, but I've been researching
Go for it.
in Ireland, and they all had passports. All these men who were, so dreadfully put upon that they absolutely needed to have their historical birth certs changed. They all had passports. They all had driving license and medical cards in the sex that they wanted. And the VIP AGP of Ireland that got this, this heartwarming human interest story, this guy that we parade around as like this Rosa Parks of transvestic fetishists. He already had a passport he had a British passport with an F on it. He had an Irish passport with an F on it because his father had been born before independence. So he had both. He had an Irish medical card with an F on it, and his driver's license had an F on it. And yet he spent 20 years going through the courts to get his birth cert altered. And that's sold to us as some like huge civil rights victory. So it's just crazy. So all these men, they can have what they want ultimately. So self-ID in effect exists already in the Netherlands without this legislation, or what would be different?
So, well, the new gender bill that is being discussed, but it's being postponed the whole time because they know they're not going to get a majority for it. They want to get rid of the process of getting this doctor statement. Okay. That instead of that, you can just say, I am a woman on the inside, or I am a man, and that you can just go to the municipality and have your documents changed. So there would be no waiting list. There would just be a 4 weeks consideration time, to see if you change your mind. But in effect, we already have self-ID. Yeah, we already have it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is sort of the question as well. Sometimes the trans rights activists say, well, you basically have it in effect anyway, so what's your big deal? And the answer to that is it's also sort of this process of, okay, it's making it easier, it's removing a few steps, but it's also the normalization of legal sex falsification. So just fucking cut it out 100%. Like, we need to wind the clock back a lot on this.
Yeah, exactly. So this is also why for, well, at least some of the hardliners like Caroline and myself, this is not over. Not only after this current bill that is in the making, once this one is off the table, we need to go back in time. Like you say, we need to change the previous laws. Because in my view, no man should be able to have female on his papers, especially not if that's going to then grant him all these rights to access women's spaces or women's rights.
Yeah. And even this sort of like gender neutralization of facilities like toilets and stuff. I know that too many cafe owners and bar owners are too cowardly to face the day when they find an autogynephile in the women's toilets and say these toilets are only for natal females. So what they'll do is they'll gender neutralize all the facilities so that they don't have to ever face that. And then we will all have to share facilities. And, it's sort of another workaround, and I think that we need to change that as well. I think
there's like a lot of what you say, like business owners who are they're just trying to avoid the whole thing and then just offer only like gender neutral or no longer like single sex spaces. There was even the other day, there was a man, I believe he's a gay man, he has like a sauna or something, and there was this non-binary person, which I believe was a woman or maybe a man, I don't know, a non-binary, whatever. And they made such a big problems out of these women and men's days that he's no longer having these days. So, that's how they try to like work around it, because they've seen that other businesses, like there was this big case around the gym that did not want to have this AGP enter the ladies' changing room. It was big news, and they got told that they were discriminating against this man who has, his whole penis, if I can say that. So he had like his whole thing still, and he wanted access to the women's changing room, and the court gave him they gave him like they were on his side on this matter.
Christ. So we need to also undo this bizarre framing that this is some sort of human rights issue. And I was thinking, like, ultimately underneath all of the rainbow bunting, all of the bright rainbow colors and the happy smiley people and the platitudes about human rights, the issue, the P underneath all the millions of mattresses is I hope you get that reference. It's like the fairy tale of the princess and the pea. Underneath all of this big stack of mattresses, the pea that we can all feel is that this is sex falsification dressed up as some sort of human rights issue. And it's just so covered in LGBTQI rainbow coloring that nobody can see it, or, and that's what we really, really need to do, is just separate these two issues. It's not about how accepting I am or diversity or equality. It's about legal sex falsification. It's not a kumbaya issue. It's not neutral. It is not benign. It's very, very different to accepting people for who they are. It's about being able to lie about your sex. It has huge implications.
And this is a men's rights movement. Absolutely.
It's a men's rights movement. Absolutely.
It gives these men, the right to access women just to validate their self-image, and this whole idea that men should always have access to women, even in areas where we are vulnerable or naked or stuff like that. I mean, that sounds like incel rhetoric to me. Yeah. And it's just shocking to see how, even politicians and organizations, and especially human rights organizations, will totally, go along with all of this. So, and
I mean,
and also,
have they been blinded by the rainbow bunting as well, or are they just all a bunch of misogynists underneath it all?
There was a long time where I thought that maybe it was also just a matter of money, subsidy. Like, for example, some organizations, they might have already sort of reached their goal or something, and they're dependent on government funding, so they just have to like toe the line. But now I believe that some people, they actually believe this. They actually believe that women should step aside for men, in sports, and they will say, well, too bad then, if you lose to a man, just whatever. They're women too, stuff like that. So yeah, no, they're definitely fully,
We're on board.
ideology captured. So
That's terrifying. Well, I've started this past week because I've encountered a few people who are, you can see in their eyes that they don't really believe it, but they, for their own political ambitions or for their career prospects, they sort of have to just go along with it. So they'll avoid really touching it if they can. But then, and I just sort of think we're really fucked if that's the case, because all of the ruling class have decided that this is okay with us because we want to make sure we have a good few holidays per year and a new car every couple of years. And I wouldn't mind becoming director of XYZ. And so I'm just going to go along with this. Yeah. And that boils my blood at the moment. I'm really pissed off at that because I faced a couple of them this past week, and I just was like, who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I don't know which ones I find worse. And for example, like if we're talking about, the minister that I interrupted, Sigrid Kaag. Look, she's a woman. She has 2 daughters. She's married to a Palestinian man. Yeah, so her daughters, they are half Palestinian. I'm pretty sure he is a Muslim. You are not going to tell me that Sigrid Kaag is fine with, a man and his whole junk entering the changing room with her daughters. I don't believe that for 1 second. Okay,
but this is this luxury beliefs thing. What she'll do is if she finds out that there's a transvestite in her daughter's gym class, she'll put her daughter in a different gym class, and she'll have to maybe go a little bit further, but it's okay because she can get her driver to do it,
Yeah, so they have the money for it, and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, not a single one of them would leave their mother in a care home with a transvestite whose whole validation rests on, women with Alzheimer's thinking he's female. You know what I mean? Like nobody's going to, they'll just move them to a more expensive, better one that doesn't have transvestites. So it's just like the epitome of luxury beliefs. It really fucking gets me enraged these days. Lydia, I want to come back to the story about the psychiatric diagnosis. Are you saying, because I've seen this in the Facebook groups, are you saying that there are only a limited number of centers or doctors that can give you this diagnosis, or can you go to any doctor? Because you were saying the waiting times are very long.
Well, you have to go to either actually you can get it from a psychologist or you can get it from a doctor. So there's actually a lot of places, technically speaking, you could go to, but apparently the waiting lists are so long. I don't know if that's a matter of demand, or it's a matter of how many of them, are actually taking the time of day to do all these conversations. But yeah, they're really complaining about the waiting time of all of it. Even though as soon as it's your turn, like I said, within 3 conversations, you can have your doctor's statement, but they just want to remove that hurdle.
Yeah, so it's probably like elsewhere. There's a list of affirming doctors that goes around, and you make sure you go to that one. But because there are a limited list of affirming doctors, you have to wait your turn, basically. And then you have a conversation, you get your note, you go to the gemeentehuis, is that how you say it in the Netherlands? You go to the town hall or whatever, and your sex. But then I guess for hormones is another hurdle. The gender clinics that get spoken about in the Dutch Facebook groups for parents, there's a limited number of them. So I'm in a Facebook group for ouders van trans kids.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm in groups in France, in Belgium, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in the UK, and Ireland. And the one in the Netherlands is extremely active. And there's one general type of profile. It's a woman with a daughter with autism, and she's desperate to get her breasts removed. And they are all trying to go the legit route, which means going to the VUMC, the Amsterdam clinic, or the Radboud. How do you say that?
Yeah, Radboud. Yeah, those are actually 2 universities, but they have their own educational hospitals. I don't know how to explain this.
University hospital,
yeah, basically like that. Yeah, and they have gender clinics, and they are the most famous ones. I would say. But they're in trouble, especially the one in Amsterdam, because they're getting
because
sued.
We're going to get onto that. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, let's get onto that in a sec. I just want to clarify before we move on to the juicy bit. The ones in the shit, I can't remember what I was going to say. I have so many questions.
They're very active. That's what you were talking about. And the
yes,
profile of the women transing their daughters.
Yes, exactly. That was it. Sorry. So I think the parents, especially, they want to try and do the way these gender clinics are very much dress up. It's a facade, because you can get the things that you want elsewhere, like especially in Belgium. Like the gender clinics are like sort of for the worried parents. It's all dress up, bring your daughter here, do it properly, have the psych evaluation. But it's by definition, it's affirming. I think some people will get a no, but none of these women's daughters are getting a no based on their autism diagnosis, which is really, really worrying. Like they all have autism it's crazy. Anyway, you do get there's another group then for Dutch people who are the men and women who are trying to go through the medical process. Very few of them end up going through the gender clinic system because they don't care about any of that. But it definitely does seem to me to be very much set up for the worried parents who want to make sure that they're doing this the legit way. And for me, it's all just this gender clinics are a total smokescreen. It's really sad in those groups, and I don't know how those people are going to live with themselves.
Yeah,
but anyway,
because in that perspective, you're absolutely right. These gender clinics, they are definitely into affirming. They are not very critical, about who comes to their gender clinic, with the children, and it's like affirmation is what they do. So
So the Amsterdam clinic in particular, this like the oldest, although I heard that these trans surgery started in Denmark back in the day, but Amsterdam is the oldest, most established university hospital doing gender affirming care protocol type stuff. What's going on with them these days? Because there have been some revelations in the popular press. Can you tell me about this?
Yeah, this is very, very interesting what's going on now. And I don't know what has started this. Maybe it's because of the election results. Maybe it is because there have been very few, although few, but there have been people very outspoken about this gender care. Now, all of a sudden, in mainstream media, people are also questioning what is going on. And there's this program called Zembla. They are investigative journalists. And a couple of weeks or maybe months ago, they started questioning the Dutch protocol, and in how much is there actually a scientific base for everything that they're doing over there. And this caused a lot of fuss at the time. And there in that documentary, they also question some of the major players in these gender polyclinics and stuff like that. And then just yesterday, they had a second documentary coming out about 3 trans people that are actually suing right now because they feel like, the surgeries were botched and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Lydia, but are you talking about particularly pediatric gender affirming care or in general?
I haven't fully watched it all, but one of them was actually about a boy that was turned into a girl, to say it like that. And he's an adult now, and his how do you call it? Like facial feminization surgery. It was botched, he said. And, there was already some damage control done by the hospital, but it wasn't enough, and so these are mostly adults, but they did transition when they were young, and they are now having these, let's say, broken bodies as a result, for which they are now suing the gender clinic.
And are they still like trans identifying?
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah, I mean, so the one that I saw, yeah.
So they're not sort of like this whole system needs to be burned to the ground. They're saying this system's great, but I got a bad surgeon on my face.
Yeah, but yeah, basically it's more in that perspective. But I do know that there are actually some people that have detransitioned, and they're also working on suing the same hospital. So, but for now, this documentary that was just released yesterday, or this article, that one was specifically about some people that still do think that they are of the opposite sex.
And so, I mean, the point is made, though, that turning a boy into a girl is actually not a very viable thing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's definitely the first reaction, you know, a lot of people have is like, yeah, well, duh, you cannot change sex. What did you think was going to happen, you know?
I'm sorry, just to understand the timeline. So the elections were in November, and then when did the first Zembla documentary come out?
I think not so long after. It must have been either December or something like that. Yeah.
And then now in February we have the second Zembla. And did those journalists come under huge fire in the meantime?
Oh yes, at the time. So they announced like, okay, we're gonna have like, you know, this episode about gender care, and you know, is it actually scientific, yes or no? And then before they even aired it, that was just the announcement, they already had to like sort of apologize. Like they literally published a letter like, oh, we had to investigate this and yada yada. They were like apologizing beforehand for actually investigating this because they got so much trouble with like all these gender organizations. They were already saying like, you know, oh, why would you investigate this, and that's just transphobic, without even seeing the whole the whole thing itself. And you know, afterwards they did another like podcast, the two journalists, talking about, you know, how much stress they were under, that they'd never seen anything like it before, you know, the amount of backlash.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, and then they did say, you know, that they did not regret it. If they were to do it all over again, they would definitely think about it longer. But I think they definitely understand that something is.
The whole point of investigative journalism is ask the questions that people are afraid to ask, and then if they get, you know, criticized even before it comes out, that tells you that you've probably chosen the right subject for your reportage, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
And another question: I watched the start of that, the first one. Annalou de Vries and people like that, were they interviewed in it? Were they asked
she was
specifically about the Dutch protocol?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And so it's a bit of a weird one. Maybe you don't know much about this. I don't know either, but I've always been curious because she sort of says she defends the Dutch protocol because she's like, yeah, as long as you use it on the right cohort of patients. But does she? Because I know that she's on, like, some people, especially the medicalizers, are under fire in like the WPATH and all for even any question of medicalizing or diagnosis or anything, you know. So she gets it kind of from both sides.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, like you can watch her, and then you have like the things that she's saying, and then you have like the body language, right? The eyes, the whatever, and you can just tell from looking at her, you are not 100% sure, are you? You know, but the thing is that, especially for those doctors, and this counts for parents as well, once you have gone on this path, once you have medically intervened on children, you've mutilated them, you sterilized them, at the end of the day, that's what you did. You know, they've pushed aside all critique for a lot of years. And then they would have to acknowledge to not only other people, but to themselves, what they have done to children, which is, in my view, one of the most horrible crimes you can commit, is commit crimes against children. So it's going to be very hard for these people themselves to put an end to this, even if they have doubts. And we know that they have doubts because there have been some talks, you know, people that perform these surgeries, some of them are starting to have some serious doubt, but they're in it now, you know. And this is why.
Sorry, yeah.
And this is why it's really important that you know, other people come in, whether it's politicians or the National Health Council, who is now ordered by Parliament to dive into gender care. They are going to have to put an end to it because apparently these people, they are no longer able to.
Yeah. There's a really interesting interview I found by a surgeon who does phalloplasties in Belgium. I can't remember his name, but he's one of the most, he's the phalloplasty guy in the Ghent clinic. Ghent is like a bit of a ground zero for genderwang, medical genderwang. and he was interviewed in like a dance magazine years ago, bizarrely. I think he's like a big fan of ballet or something, and they were talking to him, and he was like, I'm going to find it and share it in the show notes for this. He was saying, oh yeah, it's hard to have a successful phalloplasty. It's hard to do a sex change. What you really need to make these people understand is, look, you'll never be the opposite sex, but we can do something for you that might make your life a little bit easier, And that's the guy who's still doing phalloplasties on like autistic 18-year-old girls in Ghent.
Yeah.
We speak,
Unbelievable.
But their tune has totally changed. But yeah, so what you're saying is others are going to have to step in now and say, okay, these people can't undo the damage they've done, and they are never going to unfuck the situation. So we're going to have to do it for them on a perhaps official level. But so what I'm hearing, Lydia, is that things are going pretty well in the Netherlands. Like
and rapidly, like in just a matter of months, things are seriously changing. There's also been this motion which people then voted on in Parliament about, I think the documentary also had probably something to do with that, and the growing number of media attention. Like, okay, there seems to be some issue with the Dutch protocol. Other countries are stopping. Maybe we should, have a serious look into this. And then it got accepted, meaning it had a majority in Parliament that voted, for. And now the National Health Council, the Gezondheidsraad, they have to look into the scientific base of the Dutch protocol. And of course, they could also be ideologically captured. But at the same time, they will no longer have like the political covering, because the political landscape has changed. So who knows what they will end up saying.
That's awesome. But these activists won't go away.
No, they won't.
So who are the biggest players at the moment, and how have they taken the news that things are going tits up for them?
Oh, they think it's horrible. They're having these meetings at universities, like, trans hate is on the rise, and they're full blown whining and crying at the moment publicly. But yeah, they're not taking it, with elegance. Yeah, they're not. And the major gracefully. Yeah, no, and the major players. I mean, we have a lot of different transgender, let's say, organizations. One is Transgender Network. They mostly lobby, so like they will hand on all these books in schools, and they will write or they will help write like a policy and stuff like that. And then you have the COC, which is actually, it used to be the LGB organization, but they're fully into trans now, which really pissed off a lot of LGB people also. So yeah.
You say COC, I call them cock. I thought they were called cock, and I thought it was great.
No, that's funny though. But then no, they're called the COC. And just to show you how captured they are, there was like Lesbian Visibility Day, and then they'll have like a man as a spokesperson, just a man in a dress, like, oh, I'm a lesbian and stuff like that. So yeah.
I went to the Amsterdam Pride last year maybe a couple of years ago now, but I had just started looking into this stuff, and I'm not so far away from the Netherlands. So I took the bus up to Amsterdam Pride, and it was gender pride. And when I went to buy a beer, there were people who still had the lanyards from the year before, and the year before had the regular old gay pride flag, and it was called Gay Pride or Amsterdam Pride or something like that. Yeah. And then they had also their new lanyards from this year, and it was like my gender, my pride.
Yeah, they've completely taken over pride, and it's not even only about the whole gender thing. Because, for example, there's the Flag Project. I don't know if that's actually their name, but what they do is they will put up all the flags of countries where homosexuality is forbidden, and then they'll have like little signs like you get 10 years, you get 8 years, you get life sentence, you get the death sentence. And they distance themselves from pride because pride was going very hard on, pro-refugees, and they felt like, okay, that's not really, it doesn't really match with our messaging. And I was actually at Pride last year, And there was also like people flyering for surrogacy rights, you know, and stuff like that. So Pride has very little to do with being gay or lesbian at the moment. It's really a lot about gender. And I was there, I was wearing this t-shirt, lesbians don't do dick. I was with a lesbian friend of mine. And like just the number of people whining, you know, about your t-shirt on Pride.
Were they saying stuff to you?
Yeah, they came up, you know, and I was letting her do the talking, you know, as a good ally, because I don't like to talk for LGB. I'm here with you guys. But they were really like, oh my God, that's so exclusive, you know. And there was this man in a dress, basically, just, you know, going off on her, but she held her ground. But you know, it just shows you the climate. You cannot wear a t-shirt like that to Pride. You know, it's not about the gays anymore.
When I went to Pride in Amsterdam, I didn't see any butch lesbians. I saw one maybe, and I saw hundreds of thousands of people. Like there were lots of gay men, and there were lots of like greasy haired, you know, 20-year-old boys in skirts and Japanese anime games.
Yeah.
But there were no dykes as far as I could see. And I was very sad about that. It's completely changed. I have a question for you, and you may or may not have any insights on this, but the Dutch government pays for a lot of this stuff.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what made me think of it was like handing out flyers for surrogacy at Pride. And I think I'm trying to develop a theory of how we got to where we are today on a global level. And I feel like sexual and reproductive health and rights, SRHR, is a big part of international development. And obviously it used to be called family planning. But sexual rights, family planning, you know, STDs, all that sort of stuff, abortion access, contraception, violence against women, all of that comes under the banner of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And the Nordic countries like Sweden, Norway, but also the Netherlands pay a lot. They contribute a lot in international development, and a lot of international development money, it seems to me, is towards SRHR goals. And I think that this LGBT got folded into SRHR goals around 2010. And I think that's why these big players, the countries and the governments that care a lot about developing Africa for selfish reasons, probably, they started to fund gay rights stuff, LGBT rights, and that obviously included trans shit. Obviously starting around 2009, 2010 or something. First of all, do Dutch people know how much the Netherlands is responsible for pushing this bullshit around the world? And do they accept it? Are they happy about it? Like, are they aware? Like, these numbers are huge. Like Transgender Europe, it gets some of its core funding from the government of Netherlands. The last time I checked, ILGA, you know, especially, and very worryingly, a lot of these African ones and things, you know, and they're bringing this poison that sex isn't real to places where sex is very fucking real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they know?
No, Dutch people, they don't know. They have no idea. And I'm talking about the general population. They have no idea how much of, you know, their tax money is actually going into, you know, having these Dutch people go around like missionaries, you know, over the world, telling these silly people that sex is not real. They have no idea.
And there's another organization called HIVOS or HIVOS.
Oh, yeah, terrible. Yeah. I used to be a financial contributor to that, as in I used to pay them monthly, because the one of the things that they also do is that's what I thought, at least. They fight for women's rights, and especially girls' rights, right? Against female genital mutilation and stuff like that. That's how I knew them, actually. And it wasn't until, I guess, a couple of years ago that I realized that they were also pushing the idea at the same time that sex is not real, you know, and that they were also funding a lot of these projects in other countries about... you know, basically having sex removed from the from law and like this whole gender madness, and that's when I stopped. I sent them an angry email. But yeah,
and they're the H in HIVOS stands for humanists. They were like the humanist organization. Am I right?
Yeah, and they, especially in the area where I live, like every couple of months, they will stand there and they will just, stop people on the street. They can have a second about, gay rights or LGBT rights or something like that, and then they'll have a lot of people. They will sign up for it because I think, of course, we care about that, And then they will tell all these amazing stories about how great they are. But yeah, they are fully captured by transgenderism, and they spread this everywhere.
And even COC, they do as well. They also give money. And then you have this other group, I think they're Dutch, Mama Cash. Are they Dutch?
I don't know if maybe they are. I
think
not,
seen somewhere
not know them.
Or maybe they were a spin-off of Hivos or Hivos or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of Dutch NGOs and organizations and the government sort of contributing to this mess all over the world. They're active in ILGA as well, I guess. I mean, yeah, it's deeply embedded in all the institutions at UN level and stuff. Looking,
and there was also this one. Do you remember the lady? What's her name again? The lady from the UN who's really fighting this gender.
Mim Al Salem.
Yeah. Okay. So there was this one organization. I don't know where they were from, but they were fighting her. They were labeling her as a fascist or whatever, and then their funding was like 80% Dutch government. And we were all like, why on earth are we funding this witch hunt on a lady who is fighting for women's rights across the world? It's unbelievable.
Poor Reem. Yeah, I know. It's a real David and Goliath story, isn't it? One last question then, because I'm interested in the outcome of the European elections that are coming up, and that's going to happen in June. And I'm sort of keeping a tally on the Irish MEPs or Irish MEP wannabes and what they've said about gender in the past, and if they still hold the wacky beliefs that it was kind of okay to hold back when nobody was paying attention to this stuff. What's the story with Dutch MEPs? Do you know anything about it? Have you been following it? Is there anyone that we can campaign for on a EU level with worry ads to get them into Parliament so that we at least have some representation when these terrible bills get amended?
Well, we know that Doreen Rookmaker, she's an independent. She has voted against some of the, let's say, gender legislation that was out just a couple of weeks ago, maybe. But so the thing is that actually all of the political parties that are currently represented in the European Parliament have completely been decimated in the Netherlands. So we're going to see a huge shift, with the coming elections. For example, PVV is not even there. The party of Wilders, they're not even there. So to me, they're lost. I don't care anymore. Like, this is what you've done for the last couple of years. We're not friends anymore. So what I think that we're going to see with the next coming elections is that we're going to have a lot of, let's say, right-wing politicians entering the European Parliament. And it's going to be up to them to undo all of this. And I think they're going to be mostly people that are going to end up in the ID fraction of the European Parliament. Yeah. So because
the thing is, they can't really undo anything, though, can they? They can stop it, but they can't undo what's been done. That's what worries me, because the power in the EU comes from the Commission, and the Commission drafts the stuff, and then they send it to the Parliament, and the Parliament just sort of messes with it. And the last few years, what's been happening is any new legislation coming from the Commission into the European Parliament, or any revisions of legislation going through the European Parliament, the lobbyists are just jumping on it, inserting gender identity in place of woman or sex or whatever, adding all sorts of crap in there, and then people sort of not really noticing, and now it's too late, and now it's gone out into the world. There's not really, I don't know that the European Parliament is going to be able to do much except
at least stop what's going on. Yeah. And especially what I'm mostly worried about now is the hate speech that they're trying to tackle, because to them, saying a man is not a woman is already hate speech. I have a question, Lydia. Sorry, did you have any of that domestic legislation on hate speech in the works at all, or was it? What's the story there? We had some political parties fighting to make to make more harsher legislation around hate speech. But they haven't actually gotten to that point, and it's not going to work out for them right now with the with the shift that has happened in the political landscape. Because, for example, there was this one HEP, he filed a police report against me for saying he's a man. But it's very hard for them to do anything with it, because they haven't like fully incorporated this these laws yet.
It's a characteristic of gender identity, I guess, or the hate speech isn't there yet. That's interesting to know. I didn't know. And did you have a conversion therapy effort as well?
Yeah, so they did have also. It's the same as everywhere. They also had this law against conversion therapy. Which is the same as everywhere else. You're supposed to affirm, and if you don't, it's considered conversion therapy. But again, this law is not going to pass with the current shift in our Dutch parliament. Yeah,
and I'm sure at least some small part is due to you and Caroline. I wanted to just end with a very heartwarming story. I remember when I met you and Caroline was it in Vienna?
Was in Vienna, yep.
Yeah, when we met in Vienna, and you were it must have been just not long after you'd gone viral with your video. And Caroline said, and you had met and you were working together and it was all going well. And Caroline said to me that she had almost given up.
Yeah.
And then you came along, and I just thought that was so sweet. Because Caroline, just for those who don't know, she's a sports coach, sports women's, or
no, she's a family coach, like a relationship coach, actually.
Oh, I thought she was in sports.
No,
she looks really sporty.
No, she's into like family relationships, and she got really interested into the whole transitioning of children, because she saw that it was mostly teenagers not being accepted in their home, adopted girls that wanted to transition to a boy to maybe feel more accepted by their birth parents, stuff like that.
I really thought she was like in sports coaching. I mixed her up with Coach Blade on Twitter. Okay, well, Caroline was doing like absolute heroic work on her own for so long, and she was like all on her own, and she was so isolated, and she was getting so much flack, and she was the only one who was willing or could go on TV or do any radio spots or whatever. And she was just like this. She seemed to be like a hate figure. And then all of a sudden you came along, and she said to me in Vienna that, she had almost pulled out of the whole thing. And then you came along and gave like a fresh life to the movement.
Well, so it's the reason why I stepped out of, being anonymous on Twitter, was because she actually, so she started this organization for zij, which means for her, and it's running on itself now, but she was going to lay down the presidentship of this organization because of all the threats and intimidation, she's facing. And that's when I thought, like, wait a minute, if she's going to stop, who's going to fight for our rights? Is this it? Are we just going to tell our daughters and granddaughters, well, oops, sorry, you don't have the right to single spaces and sports anymore because we were too cowardly? And that's when I thought, no, like, you have to step up, and then hopefully other people will step up too, And that's when I went to the debate center and held a speech there, Yeah, so...
What a wonderful story. And but just so people know, for context, there is a big sort of underground WhatsApp-driven TERF movement in the Netherlands, but a lot of people who have to stay anonymous. So it's not like you're the only two. You're just the only two who have been able to, or who have been willing to, make your names public, basically. But there are quite a lot of women and men.
More and more coming out. Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And it's easier to come out with like a very reasonable question or reasonable point of view, if as long as we keep on the hard line, and I don't want to say extreme, but we are like, no, he is a man, I will not say she, and stuff like that. And then it's easier for reasonable people to say, well, humans, they cannot actually change sex, can they? And so we all have our role to play, I guess.
Yes, we do. Yeah, so like we can be the really, really bad guys that can maybe make a path easier for more moderates to sort of get others on board. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Okay, Lydia, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
No, thank you.
Will you keep me updated?
I will definitely keep you updated.
Thank you so much.
If you like my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter by going to peat.substack.com and taking out a paid subscription.